At my promotion party, my dad suddenly said, "Your raise should go to your sister, she needs it more than you." My boss laughed and said, "That's funny because she's not getting a single cent." My parents exploded. That night was supposed to be one of the best in my life. I had worked so hard for years, late nights, extra work, stressful projects. Finally, it all paid off. I got the promotion I had dreamed of, with a big raise that could change my life. I could move out, save for a house, maybe even take a real vacation for the first time in forever. My boss, Albert, threw a small dinner to celebrate. It was a nice restaurant, just some coworkers and my family. I was proud and wanted my parents to see how far I'd come, but the moment my dad spoke, I knew I had made a mistake inviting them. We were all laughing, having a good time. Albert gave a toast, congratulating me and praising my hard work. I felt amazing, until my dad said, "Well, of course, all that extra money is going to your sister, she needs it more than you." The whole table went silent. My stomach dropped. I hoped I had misheard. I turned to him, praying it was a joke, but his face was serious. I forced a laugh. "What?" He sighed, like I was being difficult. "Your sister is struggling, she has kids, bills to pay, she needs the money, you don't." I just sat there, shocked. Everyone was staring at me. My mom nodded in agreement, while my sister, Anne, stared at the menu, avoiding my eyes. Albert set his drink down and chuckled. "That's funny," he said, shaking his head, "because she's not getting a dime." My dad looked confused. "Excuse me?" Albert turned to me. "How much of a raise did you get?" I swallowed. 50%. Albert nodded. "And every cent of that belongs to you, because you earned it." He looked at my dad. "I don't know what you were expecting, but let me make something clear, you don't decide what happens to her money, and neither does your other daughter." He pointed at Anne. "She has a job. If she needs more money, she can earn it, just like your daughter did." My dad's face turned red. "Family helps each other," he said angrily. Albert gave him a cold smile. "You're right, but you don't get to control what that help looks like." Then my parents lost it. My mom slammed her hand on the table. "You don't talk to us like that, she wouldn't be where she is without us." Albert leaned back. "Really? From what I see, she got here to spite you." My dad turned to me, furious. "You're really just going to sit there, after everything we did for you, after all our sacrifices, and now you're just going to keep all that money while your sister struggles?" And, as always, stayed quiet. She was good at letting our parents fight her battles for her. And suddenly, I saw it, all the guilt trips, the endless lectures about family, the way they always expected me to be responsible while and did whatever she wanted without consequences. I had spent my whole life feeling grateful for things parents were supposed to do, giving me a home, feeding me, paying the bills, and they had used that against me, making me feel like I owed them for simply raising me. I had given so much, and they had just kept taking, never once thinking I might want something for myself. I looked at Anne. She finally met my eyes. And she smirked. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I set my drink down, took a deep breath, and said, "No." Silence. Everyone froze, like they couldn't believe I had actually said it. My dad leaned forward, his face dark. "What did you just say?" I held his stare. My hands shook under the table, but my voice stayed steady. I said, "No, I'm not giving her my raise. I earned it, and it's mine." Anne's eyes widened, and then, just like that, her face crumpled. Cue the tears. But I need it," she whispered. "I can barely afford rent, the kids." Dad cut in, furious. "You heartless little." Albert raised a hand. Watch it." But my dad wasn't listening. His face was red with anger. "We raised you better than this. You don't turn your back on family. We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us? By letting your own sister suffer?" Mom jumped in next. "Do you think you got here on your own? Do you think we didn't make sacrifices for you? We worked hard so you could go to college, so you could get a good job, and now you think you're too good for us? Too good for your own blood?" And then, the final blow. Mom crossed her arms. "If you don't want to help, fine, but don't expect us to support you anymore." My stomach twisted. Support me? I stared at her, trying to understand what she had just said, and then it hit me. She actually thought I needed them. And that's when I laughed. I couldn't help it. It just burst out, sharp, bitter, years of frustration pouring out in one loud, painful laugh. "Support me?" I shook my head. "You think I still need you? You haven't supported me in years. The second I turned 18, you told me I was on my own. I paid for college. I paid my own rent. I built my career without a single bit of help from either of you." Dad's face went pale. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I snapped. "When I was in college, who did you help, me or Anne?" They didn't answer. They didn't have to. I already knew. And who had dropped out? Who had gone through 3 different apartments? who had wasted every dollar they gave her because she knew they'd always bail her out. And me, the one who had worked 2 jobs while taking full-time classes, who had eaten ramen 5 nights a week just to afford textbooks, who had struggled while they threw money at her every time she made another mistake. You didn't support me, I said, my voice shaking. You abandoned me, and now that I finally have something for myself, you expect me to just hand it over? Dad clenched his jaw. She has children. And there it was, the excuse, the same excuse they had used for years. And had kids, that meant she got a free pass, that meant everyone else had to sacrifice so she could keep living however she wanted. I turned to her, gripping the edge of the table. You had a job before, right? What happened to it? She wiped her eyes. It just didn't work out. It didn't work out, I repeated, like the one before that, and the one before that? Silence. I exhaled and leaned back. I don't care, you are not my responsibility. Anne's lip trembled, then she snapped. You're such a selfish .. she yelled, slamming her hand on the table. After everything I've been through, you still won't help? My kids are hungry, and you're sitting here bragging about your stupid job. You don't even have a family. What do you need the money for? You're just going to waste it. And that was it. I stood up, loudly. The whole restaurant turned to stare, but I didn't care. You know what, Anne? I said, grabbing my purse, figure it out. Then I walked out. I didn't look back, not when my mom started yelling, not when my dad slammed his fist on the table, not when Anne cried about how unfair life was. And the funniest part? As I walked out, Albert, the best boss I've ever had, stood up, tossed a $100 bill on the table, and followed me. I stepped into the cold night, my heart racing, my hands still shaking, but feeling lighter than I had in years. Albert caught up, smirking. Hell of a speech. I let out a shaky laugh. You think they'll ever talk to me again? Albert shrugged. Do you even care? I thought about it. And for the first time in my life, I didn't. But I should have known it wasn't over. People like my parents and they don't just let things go. For a few days, I ignored the calls, the angry texts, the guilt-filled voicemails. I blocked my parents. I blocked Anne. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. One afternoon, I was at work, finally enjoying the peace of knowing my raise was mine. Then my phone rang. It was my bank. Hi, we're just calling to verify a transfer request. I frowned. Transfer request? Yes, a scheduled transfer from your account to a personal account under Anne's name. The amount is, well, quite a bit. My blood ran cold. I didn't make any transfer, I said, my voice tight. The woman on the phone hesitated. Well, it was authorized through your online banking. The login came from a familiar device. And that's when I knew. And that lying, fake crying, manipulative leech had somehow gotten into my account. I felt sick. Cancel it, I said immediately. Cancel everything. The woman sighed, relieved. Already done. I had a feeling something was off, but we have to confirm with the account holder. I hung up, staring at my phone in shock. Then another call came in. A blocked number. I already knew. I put it on speaker. What the hell did you do? Anne shrieked. I took a slow breath. You really thought I wouldn't find out? I needed that money. I laughed, actually laughed. You mean my money? The money you tried to steal? I didn't steal it, she snapped. I just borrowed it. I was going to pay you back. With what job? I asked. Silence. Then she had the nerve to start crying again. You don't understand. I have bills, the kids. I hung up. And then I called the police. I thought that would be the end of it. I pressed charges. It wasn't a huge amount, and hadn't actually gotten the money, but it was enough for the cops to take seriously. I braced myself for the fallout, the angry calls, the fake apologies, it was just a mistake excuses. But I wasn't ready for what happened next. Because Anne wasn't working alone. 2 days later, I got an email from my bank. A second attempt had been made. This time, someone had tried to take money in person. My mother. I froze, staring at the email. My own mother had walked into my bank, used whatever personal info she still had about me, and tried to empty my account. She told them I had authorized it, that I was sick and needed her to take care of it for me. But the bank had already flagged my account. After Anne's first attempt, they had added extra security. My mom had no idea. And she got caught. I called the bank immediately, and while I was on the phone, a text from my dad popped up. Dad, you went too far. You should have just given Anne the money. Now look what you did. You forced our hand. You forced our hand. That was it. That was the moment I knew. They were never my family. I forwarded everything to the cops. The police took it seriously. 2 attempts, 1 online, 1 in person. And my mom were both charged with fraud, attempted theft, and identity theft. When they were arrested, my dad went crazy. He showed up at my apartment, pounding on the door, screaming that I was tearing the family apart, that I was sending my own mother to jail. I stood behind the locked door, heart pounding, listening to the man who had never protected me, not once, now losing his mind because I had finally protected myself. Then I said the last thing I would ever say to him. You did this to yourself. And I called the cops. Even after everything, my dad wouldn't stop. And got probation. My mom went to jail. But my dad, he blamed me. Not them. Me. He told everyone that I was cold, selfish, evil for letting my own family suffer. At first, I ignored it. Blocked him. Blocked anyone who took his side. And finally, I was free. Then I found out something shocking. My parents always cared about looking perfect. To everyone else, they seemed like the best parents, loving, generous, always putting their kids first. But that was a lie. And I had proof. A month after my mom got out of jail, I got a message from an old family friend. Family friend, hey, I heard what happened, just wanted to say I always knew they treated you badly, I'm glad you stood up for yourself. I was surprised, but before I could even reply, they sent another message. Family friend, by the way, do you know about the loan? I frowned, the what? Turns out, my parents were drowning in debt. All those years they spent giving in money, bailing her out, covering her mistakes, they weren't just using their own money. They had taken out a huge loan. In my name. I felt sick. I checked my credit reports, my bank history, everything I could find. And there it was. A $50,000 loan, under my social security number, with my name on it. Forged. They had stolen from me, again. But this time, I had proof. I gathered everything, every fake signature, every forged document, every single piece of evidence that showed what they had done. Then I called a lawyer. My parents thought they could get away with anything. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. With my lawyer's help, I filed fraud charges against them and took them to court. When they saw me walk into that courtroom, with documents, lawyers, and the anger they had created, they knew. They had messed with the wrong person. The case? Easy win. The proof was there. They had taken out a loan in my name, faked my signature, and used my credit to pay for Ann's life. The result? They lost. My mom? Back in jail. My dad? Broke. And? Stuck. Because that stolen money? She had to pay for it too. I made sure of it. She had spent years using my parents' stolen money. She expected me to just give her my raise. She called me selfish for wanting to keep what I earned. So I made sure she paid, every cent. She lost her car. She lost her apartment. She had to move in with her useless boyfriend's family just to have a place to stay. And me? I took back what was mine. The last time I saw my dad, he stood outside the courtroom, glaring at me. You destroyed this family, he spat. I smiled. No, I finally stood up to the people who tried to destroy me. And then I walked away. I moved to a new state. Got a better job. Bought my own house. One just for me. I never spoke to them again. And for the first time in my life, I was free.